All right, I'm Rob Richardson. I think Manny wanted me to also help moderate the conversation to keep it moving. I'm Rob Richardson, host of Disruption Now. Uh, that's what I do as a little bit of a hobby, but as a business, I founded Disrupt Art, which is soon forming to Disrupt Now, and our whole concept is gamifying brand experiences. So think Pokemon Go, but using artificial intelligence and helping brands and experiences so they can connect with emerging consumers, making actually brand loyalty interesting, sexy, and fun. Um, and then I also have events, and my signature event is Midwest Con, which is the intersection of policy, the creator economy, as well as the future of the workforce, focusing on almost all those areas in AI and blockchain, making sure we have great policy because you need policy in order to have clear rules of the road so people can operate and go forward. We focus on the creator economy, making sure that more creators, and that can be those who are musicians, that can be those who are actually entrepreneurs. Anybody to me that is building something new is a creator, that they know how to use the tools of both what I consider the layer of data foundation, which is AI and blockchain, and then the future of the workforce, which I think is going to be centered around all those things. So podcasts, also do events, MidwestCon being the center, and then brand loyalty using technology of AI and blockchain. I guess we'll go John next. You're muted, brother.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate that. Howdy, guys. John Delia Jr. Yeah, I'm the second. Didn't make my son the third, so he got his own name. But yeah, I'm
your father might be mad about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a second generation real estate developer, housing provider, landlord. I've been in the Midwest now for over a decade doing land development, building development, etc. We operate in about 6 cities across 3 states. We do everything from residential to industrial buildings. And we'd like to say we're pushing the industry forward in terms of housing innovation. So hopefully we'll touch more on that soon. Thanks.
Yep, great. Last but not least.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everybody. My name is Amjed. I'm an entrepreneur. I manage client relationships over at LinkedIn, but I also built Inside the Green Room with a couple of my partners, which is a podcast turned TV show, live events business. And then I also run Greenlight Venture Partners. I'm a managing partner there as well. So we invest in a number of different types of startups across industries and stages. So excited to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
All right, we already have some questions coming in, but we'll get to that in a second. But and I'll go to you, Amjed, then I'll go last with this question. You all have a lot of experience and obviously have had a lot of trials and have experiments to get to where you've been. So let's actually rewind to the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey. And since we're at a marketing and sales conference, I'd like to ask the question: what advice would you give your younger self in regards to marketing and sales when you first started? And what advice would you ignore? Amjed, we can start with you, then go to John.
That's a good question. I think my advice is that I would give my younger self is probably a little more general, just because it's specific to kind of finding your own voice and figuring out the things that you're really good at, right? I think we are taught growing up oftentimes to try to figure out how to be well-rounded and be really good at a number of different things. I think you have to kind of figure out what it is that you are naturally gifted at, and just as much time as you possibly can trying to get even better at that one thing, right? Look at professional athletes, for example. That's why they are the top 1% of what they get paid to do what they do, because they became the best at what they do. Same in real estate, same in podcasting, same in venture, right? So that's advice that I think I would pay more attention to, right? Is figure out what it is that you're exceptional at and try to be even better at it. And then just ignore the noise, right? Which is there's going to be a number of different things that are going to come and distract you and try to take you away from the things that should be first, right? That book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, keep first things first, right?
Yep. So what advice would you ignor?
What I would ignore is trying to be,
balance all things to all people.
Exactly.
Yep. John, so how about you? I will answer the question. I want to get to John and really talk about, like, with you in terms of, because you talked a little bit about innovation, so I'll change the question a little bit in terms of what advice would you give your younger self in terms of how you take your business and innovate it versus what you would actually ignore?
Yeah, I think this is great. I'd say I love what Amjed said about ignoring the noise. A lot of the advice I'd give my younger self is that it's okay to be a technical expert. It's okay to be a nerd. And while you're that nerd, don't look for reassurance or validation from external parties or the outside world. So you've done the work, you've studied, you've read the books. You can't get your validation from anyone because they haven't done the work, buddy. So you might actually create imposter syndrome thinking that you're not as smart as you are. And that's what it takes, I believe, to push things forward, is to be that nerd, be the one to read, be the one to do the work, and then you're able to implement. So that's the first thing I would tell myself. And then I would ignore the noise, meaning a lot of people, like I said, they don't put the time and the effort in to study your industry, to study the path that you're going down, and you're seeking validation, you're seeking reassurance. And it can be devastating, I think, for a younger self, because when they don't align or they don't understand where the puck is going, you begin to second guess yourself. So I'd say double down, young man, know your work, do your work, and be confident that you've studied your work.
Yeah, I mean, so the advice I give my younger self, very similar. I guess we're all kind of linked here, is that, you know, essentially you can't outsource your vision to anybody, right? And so it's, you know, because I've gone through different struggles, because I've been in multiple industries. I've ran for office and many things, and so what I found is every moment that I felt like, okay, not that you shouldn't have advisors, but there are some things that you have to just know what your authentic voice is. And it's very difficult, particularly with marketing and sales. You can't really outsource that. It has to be something, it's not that you don't get help, it's that you have to really drill down, understand the vision before you hire or pay for social media ads or any of that stuff, because all of that will be a waste of time without being really thoughtful about what your vision is and how you need to communicate that, because no one else is going to be able to do that for you. No matter how many people you hire, they'll find ways to spend your money very effectively and make you a really good sales pitch, right? But it will not amplify your brand any one way or give you any additional type of impact. So the advice I would ignore is that you need to have a bunch of people who have been in the industry tell you how to do something, because if you're doing something disruptive, by nature, you're doing something that is new and you're bringing your own unique twist on that. So I think leaning strongly into who you are, as already been said by everybody here, that's what I would do. So John, I want to actually talk about some of the disruptive things that you've done and that you're doing in your industry that you kind of talk about. Talk a little bit about what things you're doing in the real estate industry.
Sure. So to get to where I'm at today, I'd like to say that I've had to overcome shame and imposter syndrome. I like to call myself a construction cowboy, meaning, you know, for the last decade, I've been on building properties, job sites, and I've really had to be dirty in the weeds and learning in the trenches, as we say, right? Now, in normal development and normal private equity, you hear about the finance bros, the suits, the Excel models, the performas, the preferred returns, you know, and I can keep going with the jargon, right?
Right.
But the truth is, by me being on the ground, I was able to unlock kind of where the industry needs to go. So, like I said, I've been a housing provider, you know, and everyone's like, oh, Airbnb, you know, fix and flip, you know, HGTV, right? That's what I do. That's who I am, right? Landlord is bad. But no, I think for us, innovation, let's talk about that. So housing has been built in America the same way since the 1800s. On-site, stick lumber, et cetera, et cetera. And you see the same job site every city you go to, the pattern repeats itself. What we've really done and what we're doing is we're the first people in Clark County and in Ohio to bring housing innovation to the forefront. And what I mean by that is we're now building houses out of steel, cold form steel. And you're like, what does that mean? Well, roll form steel technology, when you look at the early days, Henry Ford, you remember those, Rob, those cars from the 1950s and 60s that had the flares and the curves?
Yeah.
Yeah. So those were steel cars. We don't have them anymore because obviously technology has advanced.
Sure.
But that's how you were able to have all those what I'll call sexy designed. Well, that same technology can be applied to the real estate industry, and it's in the code. No one's ever used it, and people don't use it. Now, it's being used in Florida and California and New York because it's non-combustible. But really what I've done is I call myself the Jeff Bezos of housing. So when people say, man, I want to invest in your business, I'm like, well, we have logistics, we have warehouses, and we have heavy manufacturing. Like, whoa, ew, you're supposed to be asset light and just make cash.
Right.
Yeah. So what we're doing is we're building houses and factories out of steel and we're
Right.
dropping them off on site, and we're building these structures that are superior to anything that's in the market. Now, when they say, John, why are more people doing this? Well, it's only 2% of the industry right now. And it's not because it's not better, superior, et cetera, but what we call misaligned incentives, meaning I'm the owner, I'm the developer, and I'm the contractor. So I own the full stack. And when you own that full stack and you're competing in a marketplace, you look at your competitors, my competitors are publicly traded companies, and you say, man, this really one rich guy, and I'm going to use the rich guy term, this rich guy, he controls all the supply houses in my neighborhood, in my city. How do I beat them? Well, you can't beat them with money because they control the money. What you do is you beat them with your brain, innovation. Yep. So that's really what we're doing is we've thought
I have a follow-up question to that too.
Please
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
So and it'll also be for Amjed too, because it's I think it's something that disruptors like us struggle with, and it's something that I'm still trying to figure out. So you can help me too. How do you explain an innovative concept like you just said, John? Like people see, and they just say they have to, like, in their brain they don't see it, right? So like, and you need obviously investors and other people, and you got to figure out a way to make it so they can see where the vision is going. How do you explain something that is not currently being done? This is literally what all of us are doing. How do you explain that to get investors or to get people to understand that there is future value in this way, in your vision? How do you explain that?
So first it starts with what I first shared with being a nerd and being okay with being smart. Because when you read those books, it's a 1,000-page book. How many people will read a 1,000-page book? They'll tell you NBA stats, NFL stats, but they didn't read the book. So what I've learned—
They read the Cliff Notes.
Yeah, So, first, Rob, I tell you, stop explaining. Show them. Don't explain.
There you
Guys, you haven't done the work. You're not qualified to have this conversation with me. Now, what I will do, I'll show you what we're doing. And what we're doing is we have these manufacturing machines in a building that I own, that I bought, and we're printing and roll forming this metal that I bought directly from the US steel mill, and we're turning it into industry component parts. So what I've had to do is be okay with being incremental, because let's go to VC and big money. The VCs have spent millions of dollars in this industry, and all my competitors are bankrupt. They go bankrupt.
I got the same thing happening to mine. Yep.
They go bankrupt. And you're like, guys, why are they failing and they have all the money and you're still alive?
Because same thing with blockchain and me. I see it. Yep.
Yeah. I'm so narrowly focused that my niche is like, it's the ugly third party that nobody wants to touch. Well, that's a huge 2% of the residential market. That's a huge number, huge opportunity, but it's unsexy to the big guys. So I stopped explaining and I started doing. And there's a song that's like, less talking, more action. Yeah. So that's what they do. Less talk, more action.
Absolutely. Robert Greene has a line, the author who did 48 Laws of Power, also been on my podcast. He says in his book, Mastery, win through your action, never through your arguments. So I think that goes to that point. Amjed, how about you? How do you approach, because you have to do, you at the same time, sometimes you have to get some corporate sponsors. Sometimes you have to get people on board to get to see your vision. And so how do you do that in a way for some folks that need a way to understand this disruptive vision that you put forward?
I think what John was saying earlier about kind of being not being afraid to be a nerd, I think it really is key, right? Just kind of understanding yourself, understanding your audience and your market and the folks that you're actually speaking to, and being able to speak in their language, I think, is the most important thing. I work with a ton of founders, and I meet a lot of founders on a regular basis. Either they're looking for capital or they're just trying to build relationships, the right relationships, so they can help accelerate and grow their businesses. The best founders that I meet are the best storytellers, right? They're the ones that know how to give you the right mix of information and data to make sure that you understand their market, for example, right? But they're also experts in their space, and they can talk in a way that makes you feel comfortable and allows you to learn something new, right? Absolutely. Best founders and best people that I speak to that have really great storytelling abilities, they're the ones where you walk away from a conversation and you learn something new. I don't know everything about everything, right? I'm constantly learning everything that I possibly can. I'm a sponge. And I think that the right folks that do the best job at telling stories, they figure out how to tell it to you in your own language, right? Look at ChatGPT. ChatGPT took the world by storm. And everybody's like, what is a large language learning model? What is artificial intelligence actually? It's not a new thing. It's been around.
Not at all. Long time.
But like anything, word of mouth is the most important piece of marketing you can get, right? It's like if a product is really good, look how fast Slack, attracted people on their platform. Look how quickly Threads had people on their platform. Same with Instagram, same with TikTok, right? And so I think being able to simplify something in a really concise way and being able to speak in people's language, I think is key, right?
No, I agree.
I'm sure you must experience that, trying to figure out, how to ask these really sharp people like Robert Greene on your podcast, their experiences and, talking about the things that they've written about, right?
No, absolutely. And my advice, I do something very similar to what you just said. I really work to try to figure out what motivates them and how their frame of thinking, and then really talk about it in metaphors. That's why I just try to tell people what we do is like Pokemon Go, but for brand loyalty. That's what we do, right? It's easier for people to say than I could tell them all the technical terms, but I found that, those who create technology sometimes feel like just having the technology is the innovation. It is not. It's creating value. That is the innovation. And
Yeah.
part of creating value is making people actually understand what you do. And that disconnect, I think, happens a lot, which is why this is important when we talk about marketing sales. Jay, let me want to say something.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that you kind of made me think about is that when you think about technology, for example, right, when technology really becomes part of culture, right, you got companies like Uber, that Uber became kind of a verb. Google became a verb, right? Like, I'm
Yep.
gonna Google that. I'm Ubering there, right? Like it's the Chipotle of Mediterranean food, right?
Yep.
And I think that that's kind of, goes back to your idea about using metaphors and trying to find ways to make some complex idea or thought more digestible and understandable, right? And I think, again, because we're talking about sales and marketing here, I think one of the key things that I found success in is really diving deeper into that data. Being in the trenches, like you said, John, right? I think is so key, because you get to talk directly to the consumers, the people that are buying your product. Who
Yep.
better to get, information and feedback from than the people that are paying for your product, right? But you have to do the work to understand why they bought it in the first place, what they
Yep.
care about, how to improve the product, what they're using it for, right?
Yeah. And I think so. This goes to two questions I want to get to. One, how do you address negative feedback then as you deal with consumers? Because it's, I'm sure Slack, all these people didn't start off perfect, right? So how do you, I'd like to hear from both of you. How do you deal with negative feedback, and what do you take away from it? Start with John, then Amjed.
Sure, I'll jump in here. Negative feedback. Honestly, so I went to school at Ohio State. I was at the Knowlton School of Architecture, and then I was also at Fisher for a little doing, there we go, Frez. So Fisher Real Estate Society, and we were in the engineering triangle. And I remember when because I thought I wanted to be an architect, I was going through my architecture courses, and we'd always have these pinup days where we pin up our work, and we'd have to kind of explain our thought process, what we're doing, why we're doing, and how we got to our project. And I remember my professors would always call it co-collaboration, because during the week they'd give you feedback, they'd make adjustments to your plans, and they'd say, hey, we need to do this. I'm like, okay, we're co-collaborators. So what I've realized is like, you just have to be really, really receptive to everybody being opinionated, regardless of what you're doing. It's going to be endless. You can't take shame to it. You can't force it out. It's a part of the process. And that's why we call it co-collaboration. So I think even for us, when people say, why aren't more people doing this? Or it's like, guys, it's early, but you can join the process. You can learn through us. We're not here to convince you. We're not here to force you, but we will present our work and we will show it to you. So I think that you have to be really grounded in your confidence and in your niche and in what you're doing. And that takes a lot of resolve.
It does.
And patience. And I think that patience, that's a key word. We're playing a long-term sport. This is a sport to me. It's when you have the box, I'm thinking outside the box, but only because they gave us the framework and the rules and the system. And then I could be creative because I had it. So I'd say that, on the grand scheme of things, I'm never going to rub in your face, I told you so. But it's like, hey,
I told you so.
When I was early to the party? So, last analogy of feedback. It's like, if you're in Miami and you're going to Art Basel, right? All the cool parties are happening at like 11 o'clock and later, right? I showed up at happy hour expecting everyone to be there. They're like, John, calm down. John, like, save your energy. You can go home, you can take a nap, you can go to dinner, and you can come back out. The cool kids are coming later. So, it's okay if you're not cool, if you just have enjoyment and passion and energized from what you're doing. So I'd say that feedback is always going to be there. You don't always have to respond to it.
Mm.
Yeah. I have a coach that said something similar to me one day, but one of the things that she said that stuck out to me is that feedback is a gift, right? And I think that applies in any aspect of life. I think when you are building a product or a service, you're going to have to pick and choose which negative feedback you want to take and actually implement into your product. I've had the pleasure of getting a chance to work at LinkedIn and being part of their ecosystem and seeing how they develop products, right? And how they take feedback into consideration. They've gone as far as creating an entire community board where folks that use specific products actually go and share that feedback directly on that community board, and they'll take some of those ideas and implement them into the product. But when you're first building your MVP, right, your minimally viable product, in the beginning, you're not going to have the luxury of being able to move as fast and respond to as much feedback as you possibly can. You have to focus on creating the product and making sure that what you're doing itself has some usability and functionality, and you continue to improve and iterate on it as you get more dollars in the door, as you get more users to use your product, right? I think the other thing that you have to think about too is there's this concept called dog fooding, which you are testing and using your own product, right? That way you can break it. You can see how it works and how it, the areas that it needs development in. And so I think that there's a number of different ways to kind of take into consideration people's feedback, right? I take it, you probably feel the same way about feedback that you get about your podcast, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I would take this more with the product, with the technical product and building technical product. What I found is that the negative feedback tends to be the most useful because, no feedback means nothing. A lot of times positive feedback isn't actually real. People just, especially if they know you, they want to make you feel good about it, right? Or they just don't want to offend you because they know you. But the negative feedback, especially if it's repetitive from multiple people, then you're like, okay, that's something I really need to look at. This is not connecting in the way that I intended, because as a founder, it's your baby, and most of the time your baby is a lot uglier than you think it is. So like getting the feedback, at least with a technical product, has been one of the most useful things that I've definitely have actually I think it's one of the most useful things that people have. I actually ask people, please, I don't want the fluff. Like, what is wrong? Like, how can I improve? What makes this better? I think that makes for a better product when you do that. When you're not in love with your product, but you're in love with making sure that the customer can connect to it. That's what I think people have to view that. That's why I look at it as mostly a positive thing, for sure. All right, we're going to work. There's a few questions from the audience. But before I get to that, I want to ask one other question that I think is important. How do you find your target marketing in your community quickly? Because we want to make sure we get to some audience questions. How do you go about knowing what that looks like and who your target market is?
That's a great question. So I'm gonna go back to Amjed's point about dog food. So, when I talked about earlier, I'm vertically integrated. I'm my first customer. So although now I have this manufacturing innovation arm to our company, we're builders, we're investors, we're landlords. So we're bringing this product to ourselves before we try to even serve the market. And we'll use ourselves as the initial case study. Hey guys, look at what we did over here. Look, we built a subdivision. There are 19 of these superior structures in Ohio. First time it's ever been done. We did it, but it's not for sale. It's ours. Right. So, I think that's very important. It's like, first and foremost is to have that proof of stake, proof of work in which we're doing. And then I think, to find your audience for us, especially with innovation, you can't be afraid to leave your backyard. So when it comes to engineering, when it comes to architecture, when it comes to civil, we've had to seek national help. So we go to the non-combustible superior markets, New York, California, Florida, and we look to them for leadership. And we say, guys, you're doing this amazing thing. I know for you, it's every day, but for us back in our hometown, it's never been done before.
Right.
Can you coach us? Can you help us? Can we work together? Can I hire you? So, I think it's anchoring and co-collaborating with people who are already at the destination and not being afraid to leave your backyard.
Absolutely.
So, and what we do is we take those professionals and we help educate our own city officials.
Absolutely.
Because the book is there, that code book. It's that 1,000-page book that I have to read over and over. It's there, but you know, you need someone to speak the language to them. And I think that's when, you know, the proof of work is there.
Yeah. Amjed.
I love that you said collaboration, right? I always tell people, I'm like, when you are the most successful, the people at the top, they collaborate. The people at the top, they build together, they work together. They're not selfish and looking. I mean, some of them are, right? But most people that are the most successful, right? You go and you look at, I live here in New York City. I'm pointing this direction because I'm looking at a ton of buildings. You look at any of these buildings, very few of these buildings are owned by just one person. A lot of them are groups of people that came together and brought the capital together, right? But to your point, Rob, you know, I think there is something to be said for market research, right? I think market research itself is extremely important, and those people have jobs and get paid for a reason. I'm gonna tell you a funny story. When I was in college at Ohio State, I used to go to Wendy's as a center of innovation, and Wendy's would bring in, like, I don't know, I think maybe 40 or 50 people for these sessions, and they would pay us, some students, some older folks, like $30, $40 to come in and taste a couple different burgers and tell them what we think of these burgers, right? And obviously they would take the feedback into consideration, and they would use it to improve the sandwiches that they had with everybody tasting. And so I would go there regularly and try some of these different black bean burgers as they were first coming out, when these sort of vegetable meatless options were first coming out, right? And I would taste them and try them and give them the feedback, and they'd have me go through the survey, right? Fill out what I liked about the texture,
right?
What I liked about the bun. Did I like the bun with the sesame seeds on it, or I like the plain brioche bun, right? And so I think when you're building a product and you're selling something, you have to do the same thing. You have to go and talk to people. You have to be in the actual space with the users themselves, talking to them about how they do what they do.
Yep.
Right?
All right. A couple of things I want to get to. Someone asked very quickly, Audit's question: where do you find existing tools and tech products fall short? I mean, I'm going to answer that question very quickly. The user experience, like, they focus on technical build, and I have this new technical product, but hardly any time is spent on what is the user experience, what will they go through, and actually focusing on that. You have a lot of people that are engineers that just focus on that. So that's kind of my thing there. And I see Manny's there for the wrap up here to get us there. So good to see you, Manny.
Yeah, no, appreciate you all. This amazing panel. Maybe Diana asked a question, with burnout a reality, can you share how you maintain business endurance as you are building and operating? John or Amjed, one of you want to answer that real quick?
I can chime in quickly. I think one of the things that I think about a lot, especially for myself, right? I'm busy. I got a lot of things that I'm juggling. I think it's important to make time to do the things you love. It's important to make time to spend time finding some peace, doing some reading, right? I try to go and see my chiropractor. I try to get a massage. I try to, you know, speak to my therapist so that I'm having mental clarity. I try to pray every day so that I have some connection to my faith, and that gives me some grounding. So those are some of the things that for me make me feel like I can continue down the path. But really great question. Really great question, John.
Now, I would also say what I do very quickly is that you have to schedule that in. You have to put in exercise, because if you do not, you have to put in exercise. You have to put in and schedule these things. If you do not do it, you will not be a functional CEO, and you will burn out and you'll be over. So you are the most important, especially if you're a founder, you're the most important asset. So if you don't invest in your health, you don't invest in your mental wellness, you need to put it in and do it, because otherwise you will burn out, and it's going to cost your business, period.